Have you ever checked your phone before you even had coffee? Not because you're bored, because you need to know. Are they okay? Are we okay? Did something shift while I was sleeping? You tell yourself you just care a lot. And you do. But caring isn't the same as this feeling. The one that sits on your chest like a held breath, waiting for something to go wrong. Today we're talking about anxious attachment. Where it came from, what it's costing you, and how to start living like you don't need constant proof that you're loved. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates. And this is the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Today we're diving into anxious attachment. This will be a part of a series that will go over the different attachment styles. I know we did an episode a while back on attachment styles, but I think it's really important with people becoming more aware of this topic to learn about each of these individually, how to work with it if you have it, and how to work with your partner if they have it, and how to find your way back to secure attachment. So, anxious attachment's a pretty common one out there. It is one where people are just, you're constantly needing validation. You're constantly trying to make sure everything's okay in the relationship. You're constantly over-explaining yourself, sending long messages and explaining yourself away because you're so worried about saying something that's going to push your partner away. You know, there's different levels of this.
Yeah, I am surrounded by two people who are very, very close to me in my life who kind of still show this a little bit. You, of course, and Heather. I love you guys so much. And, you know, this is something I want people to understand right away, though, because a lot of these terms that we hear have become popular. They've become these pop words, these pop culture words, right? And so we got to make sure we ground this stuff like we always do, grounded in reality, grounded in where we all are, right? And grounded in a way that we can apply this wisdom to our life. So first thing I want to make everybody understand is this is not just somebody being clingy or needy or dramatic, right?
Yeah.
Or you're just too emotional, Michael. Or, you know, Heather, who's not here, just being too emotional, Heather. Because that's really shallow, right? It's really a shallow way of coming at this. And honestly, it's kind of cruel, right?
Yeah.
You know, when people that I love who kind of have this propensity for this anxious attachment, which I tend to attract them in my life. I don't know why that is, but you know, I've done a lot of work in my life. I don't suffer from this. I'm kind of like the opposite of this, right? I'm sometimes too independent, sometimes too, right? But
The avoidant attachment side of things.
Right. Almost to that level. But I've worked really hard to be a good counterbalance for these kind of people in my life because, you know, I've said it to you before. I've said it to you in real life, but also I've said it on the show before that I don't mind giving you some extra, you know,
Reassurance.
Yeah, thank you. I don't mind doing that. Doesn't cost me a dime. Doesn't hurt me, right?
Yeah.
And actually, it's a better way for me to be more protective and more considerate and more compassionate. Is it a little annoying sometimes? Yeah, but we're trying not to be cruel here or really shallow with how we deal with this stuff, because this thing is at the core of this. This is the nervous system. This is the body trying to protect the place of connection, because somewhere along the way, connection didn't feel very secure, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of these attachment styles stem from just sort of the way we learned how loved worked growing up. You know, for anxious attachment, we learned that love was conditional. And not only that, but it was never having consistency in the household. You know, you're loved one minute and then you're sort of neglected the other. And it's this constant need to chase validation, to make sure everything's okay, because growing up, you never knew necessarily what would get you that feeling of security in your own home.
Because it was never the same. It was just all over the place, right? Yeah. Right. And that's why this is why these folks tend to be very hyper vigilant, right?
Yeah.
Because you are literally watching for everything. You're watching for tone, and you're watching for the timing of things, trying to keep those patterns, making them easy to see. Facial expressions, how people text back to you, right? How important is body language here?
Oh, it's
right.
It's vital because they, like you said, they're picking up on every cue, consciously or not. They read the room. They're the kind of person who can go in and know exactly what they're walking into, or sometimes over dramatize it in their minds, where they think something's wrong when nothing is wrong.
Yeah. Right. And they're not, and just like all the topics we talk about here, we like to point out that the unconscious things we do and the conscious things we do, and in this case, they're not doing this stuff, always doing it consciously, mostly unconsciously. It just becomes automatic. But it also starts to feel like real love or real care, right? When it may not, or probably is not that.
Yeah.
Especially on the surface. Just to kind of put this, in a way that everybody can kind of follow along with me. Just understand it. It's just them, their need to feel, or their need to know that you guys are okay. That I'm okay and you're okay and everything's copacetic and kumbaya, right?
Well said.
Because really, their bodies are asking these very important questions that we may not even be aware of. Those of us who are partners for these folks, right? Or friends or whatever. What their bodies are asking us, Michael, is, am I safe with you? I need to know. Am I safe with you? Right?
Yeah.
Are you still here? I know you're here physically, but are you still really here? Are you still with me? You're not about to leave, are you? Right? And probably the one that everybody can relate to, even those who aren't anxious so badly this way. But did I do something wrong? Because we all pick up on these weird vibes. Did I do something wrong? Right?
Especially when they're really bad into the anxious attachment. So often, everything, I mean, a simple hello, it could be then interpreted 100 different ways of, what did they mean by that hello? It's this anxiety that starts building up within them. And I think realistically, when it comes down to it, it's their nervous system. Their nervous system gets activated. They don't know that. They don't understand that. And instead, they read it as an internal cue. They read it as intuition. They read it as something's off here. They feel anxious, so they project that then on the people they love and that are around them. And I think often one of the hardest things for people who suffer with people-pleasing or anxious attachment, and this was one of the deepest parts of my shadows, I realized I was always the hero, and that was also sort of my manipulative way to get love and validation. The even deeper root of that is I wasn't allowing myself to be okay when other people were experiencing uncomfortable emotions. I felt discomfort from their discomfort, and so I had to fix. I had to figure out what was going on. And I think so many people suffer from that, where they think, like you said, I'm just a good person. I'm just really nice. I just really care. And what it really is you're not okay, which means I'm not okay. So let me fix you so I feel okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right. And for us at Ashla, when we encounter this becomes a teaching about fear and connection, and understanding that there is a deeper need for safety here, right?
Yeah. Because
there's nothing wrong with wanting love. Even the most vile villain in the history of the entire universe wanted love, needed love, right? There's nothing wrong with needing connection. And this path, the path of light, does not ask us to become detached and cold, certainly not inhuman. Love is sacred. Bonding and connection, that's sacred too. This connection is what makes us human. It's what makes us imperfect. It's what makes us real and us. But when we filter love through fear, we can't rest inside that, can we?
No.
We have to learn to recognize when our hearts are reaching from love, and when and conversely, when the body is reaching from panic. We have to be able to see these things. Both of those states of being deserve compassion, but they're not the same. We can be tricked into feeling like they're the same, but they can't. Love opens things. Fear closes things off. Love helps us trust. Fear is constantly scanning everything over and over again. Love allows us to speak honestly. Fear will test and chase. But no matter what the results are, we'll always brace for something like loss. Now, the anxious attachment is not spiritual failure. It just means that when we see this, when it's brought to our attention, we need to bring safety and healing from a different place other than where this fear is coming from. And you know, I hear this a lot because I hear this from anxious attached people. And I think there's a lot of people who see them or who are partners to them or friends to them, but also from them themselves. But there's really this label as needy or too much, right? But as we've been discussing underneath that, there's usually it's just all fear responses, a body system trying to find safety from that. How would you explain the difference between genuine love and the fear of losing love from the lens of a anxiously attached person? What do they need?
I think one of the most important things to realize here is when you're really in the thick of anxious attachment, you need to understand what this attachment is driving you for. Now, I'm glad you brought up fear because fear is a necessary thing to understand about this. I know when I was in the heart of my anxious attachment, I look at any relationship where I did get really attached, I was confusing that fear with chemistry. I was confusing it with magnetism because all of a sudden I was recreating my childhood dynamic. I was chasing that validation I never got as a kid. And it felt so sacred. It felt so explosive in chemistry. But in reality, it was my nervous system saying, this is bad. Get away. Like, this is wrong. And when we get actually into healthy relationships, our nervous system feels like it's boring. Like, this isn't exciting at all. When realistically, we're feeling peace. We're feeling calm. We're able to relax. And that doesn't feel like love to us. We confuse fear with love. And is this thing that anyone who suffers from anxious attachment really needs to take a hard look at is if you keep attracting the same type of partner into your life, you're the common denominator here. And I'm not saying you're the reason the relationship is toxic, but you're the reason you keep ending up in these dynamics.
Everywhere you go, there you are.
And choosing these partners, yeah.
Everywhere you go, there we are, right?
Yeah.
We can't get away without bringing ourselves along everywhere we go. And
yeah,
we can either bring a healed self or someone going through healing or the person who's doing the same old things over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah. You know, it's like they talk about nowadays how a lot of girls have like they friend zone a bunch of guys and then they always end up in these bad relationships. If you're someone who falls in that, whether you're a guy or a girl and you have these people friend zoned, look at them as your potential partners because watch how these people in the friend zone are people who you genuinely have great chemistry with and you feel safe with. You're just not attracted because you're not feeling that same chaos that you're constantly chasing after that you're confusing for chemistry.
Well, that segues us into how this shows up. And what's interesting about these attachment styles, this one in particular, it shows up both inside and outside. Like, people can see this, right?
Yeah.
And I'll bring up one from the outside or some from the outside. It makes a person look like they're always dramatic or being dramatic or controlling to a point.
Yep. Or needy.
And needy, right? Sometimes they do cause harm.
Yeah.
Right? How did this stuff show up in inside?
You know, a lot of the inside stuff is that it's the nervous system is constantly activated. You're constantly questioning your own worth. You know, there's different types of things that just start looping in your head. You start creating stories around everything. Any action, you start then creating a narrative around that you start embodying as fact, the more it starts ingraining into your system. Yeah. You start trying to find ways to create fights just to get the partner to draw back in. You end up texting multiple times in a row because you have so much emotion going on inside that it just overflows out of you because you can't store it all inside because you're too busy chasing these stories.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And then,
I've been guilty of that many a time.
and then you will manufacture conflict just to get some kind of response.
It's that whole as above, so below. You know what?
Right.
As below, so above.
No, you said
Whatever
it right the first
you-
time. As
Oh,
above,
okay,
so
perfect.
below. Yeah.
Damn dyslexia. But it's like we will create the exact outcomes we're afraid will happen, and sometimes we unconsciously do this intentionally, because it's easier to say they're rejecting me, they don't love me, when they're actually trying, and you're pushing them, and then they leave, and it's like, I knew they were trying to get away from me. I knew they didn't love me. I knew they weren't going to stay.
Yeah. You know, in the show we did in season 1 around the attachment styles, because I think we did a show around all 4 attachment styles, just kind of in one show. And in season 2 now we're breaking them down, giving them their own episode. But I remember, saying in season 1, while Heather was here, Heather definitely suffers from this in a bad way, and she's done a ton of work to get through all of this, right? But it comes back to the, I'll say I love you, we are fine, I'm not leaving. And for a little bit that settles her down, that settles down her body. There's relief, right? She gets a chance to exhale. But before, because that deeper wound wasn't healed, that relief was very temporary, right?
Yeah.
These things all come back up again. And she needed another sign, another word, another message, whatever, proof, basically wants proof that the connection is still safe. Not quite so bad now. Now I can kind of tell when she's starting to amp up, as it were, in this. And I just grab her and hold on to her for a minute, right? That tends to calm everything down. Hugs are magic, by the way. If you're someone who doesn't like hugs, you should learn to love hugs, because they will literally heal you.
Yeah.
Physically.
Nervous system regulation, co-regulation, yeah.
Yeah. So, there is a way out of this. And I don't know if you ever get 100% better with anything, right? But you can get to a point where you won't need as much reassurance. And another way this shows up, you'll start to see your partner, if they're anxiously attached, you'll start seeing them kind of be more quiet and more attentive. You can see it in their face, where they're studying you. They're looking at everything you do. They'll give you little questions about something that doesn't seem that important to you, right? For example, if I am sending Michael a text message, I'll see her kind of looking over, right? I'll turn my phone so she can see it, right?
Yeah.
Because that helps her, because now she doesn't have to ask me. Now she doesn't have to feel bad about asking me, right? Because then when they go into this, they'll start asking questions and they'll start feeling bad about asking, right? Yeah. So I'll turn it. If I notice that she's kind of like peeking over, I'll just turn it. Because my screen protector has like a privacy thing where you can't see from the side. So I'll turn it to make sure she can see it, right? Little tiny things. But you'll start seeing this. They'll be scanning for proof. They'll be looking for proof in everything you do. And yeah, it gets tiring sometimes, but that's how you know this is starting to show up. But that's when you start seeing this stuff. That's also your cue to do the little things to help them regulate. Right? Because they will shrink, and they will, or they'll overfunction. They go on these big, huge, ups and downs, these peaks and valleys.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, is it's all about where their self-worth is lying, because that is the root of this. Same with avoidant. Like, you'll be amazed how much the root of these things are very much the same thing between both attachment styles. It's just how we've learned to show up in the world. And with anxious attachment, when we get to that place where we're needing that validation, when we feel small and we're trying to accommodate other people's needs to keep the peace, it's because our self-worth is really low at that time. And if we don't cultivate a sense of autonomy and self-worth, it's going to be constantly based on our partner and where they're at, which is then going to lead to us constantly testing the waters, gauging the temperature, for trying to do all we can to get that reassurance. because we no longer have control over ourselves. We've given control of our nervous system to the people in our lives.
Be careful who you give your power to.
Yeah.
Because people will abuse it, you know? And
even good people. Like,
yeah. And look, I give this red flag every time we do a show around this kind of around this stuff where we give people power over our decisions and things and how we live. People will never, if people really love you, you don't have to earn that. You don't have to prove that, right? But I want the partners of anxiously attached people to understand they're not trying to prove your worth. They're trying to feel safe. That's one of the biggest takeaways. And I'll say this again in my closing later. But because this is going to feel like one of those red flags where somebody is like, you know, oh, they're just always trying to get me to prove myself. No, they're not. I promise you they're not.
No.
They don't know how to communicate with you and feel safe at the same time.
Yeah. If anything, they see your worth more than you do.
Exactly.
That is one thing anxious attaches are really good at. They can see the good in everyone. They see the potential.
Yeah, and they're literally giving you power over them. So be kind with it. Don't take offense to it. Be kind to it. Right? Because you really are the one that can help them heal from this. So and this brings me back to that reassurance loop. It's one of the biggest, easiest parts or things to see how it shows up here, right? And as I said, the person gets relief, but it doesn't last depending on their level of healing. Sometimes you can get a week out of that. Sometimes you get 30 minutes, right? Just depends on where they're at. How do we start to help someone build that eternal safety as their partners so that they're not always outsourcing to get their peace?
That's a really good question. I think one of the big thing is communication. That couples journal I talk about often is amazing for anxious attachment because it gives them a place to sort of put all their crazy racing thoughts and all the stories of them telling themselves into a page that they can give you to read, look over, and reassure. I think another thing is just holding that space without judgment or criticism. And I know that can be difficult. Some people do come across really needy, really clingy because they're working through their stuff and trying to figure it out. And again, I think an important discernment we make when we're in partnership is just because someone's anxiously attached doesn't mean they're trying to fix it. So you got to verify, is this something they're willing to work on, or is this their default state and they want to stay here? Because then you will be stuck giving that reassurance, making sure they always feel like they're wanted and needed. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean they're not worth being with, but it's just something to keep in mind if you're planning a long-term relationship.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what the couples journal Michael's talking about, we haven't really talked about it in a long time. It's basically a journal that you share with your partner, and you both can put stuff in so that each other can read. Because sometimes it's easier to communicate with pen and paper or through texts, right? A lot of us, Heather and I, for her, when we get in a fight, and everybody fights, everybody has problems, right? Or let me restate that. Because fights aren't necessarily problems. It's just communication breakdowns, right? And if she has to text me to get all of her feelings out, that's fine, right? So that's what that couples journal is. This is for you anxiously attached people. I have an axiom for you. Perception is reality. And I give this to you mostly because, a slow reply to a text message does not automatically mean rejection. It certainly feels like rejection, right?
Yeah.
It certainly does. A missed call, 3 missed calls. When your partner's being quiet, that's not always distance, but it certainly can feel like distance.
Yeah.
A tired, rundown, kind of annoyed tone in their voice isn't always disinterest or disconnection, but it can feel like they don't want anything to do with you, right? So perception is reality, because the perception becomes your emotional reality if you allow it to, right, manage things for us. And once that happens, our nervous system and body will respond in kind. Yeah. It will respond in kind. And this is why this attachment style feels so convincing because it literally starts from the inside, where all things start, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I've had to reassure Heather about over time is that you're not making this up, Heather. Those of you who have anxious attachment styles, we get it. You're not making this up. I know you're not making this up because every part of you on the inside is telling you this is true.
Yeah.
Doesn't just because all of that may be so doesn't mean it's real, though. Okay, we have to watch our perception. We got to make sure our perception is not creating a new reality that is not honoring actual reality. So we have to make sure that while we have to give ourselves grace, we have to give our partners grace too, who cannot experience the emotional reality that you are experiencing this moment. I just kind of wanted to share that part there.
No, that's so important because, again, it comes back to the stories we tell ourselves. It's when we feel something, our mind starts going crazy. It starts trying to connect dots that aren't even there, and it creates narratives. And when we decide to grab onto that narrative and start trusting it as fact over reality, we end up bulldozing through with our own definition of what's really going on, and it has nothing to do with the reality that's in front of us. And one important discernment I want to give to our listeners who have gotten this far and wonder if anxious attachment is what they struggle with. An important thing to look at is your relationship, because if you are in an abusive relationship, a toxic relationship, where you are being manipulated, gaslit, you are questioning things that are validly concerned, it is very important to have discernment here. We're not saying everything you tell yourself is a lie, all right? Always verify. But it's important to know if you're in a relationship that triggers these things and there's actually things going on, you'll have more clues than the stories that are running through your head. You can have peer perspective. And it's just important to validate before you condemn, but also verify before you give amends, especially if you do feel like you might be in an abusive relationship.
Right. This is why self-trust is one of the most important pieces to this, besides discernment. Discernment's probably the most important. But self-trust, God, that's really important here. Right. And another axiom, without truth, there is no trust. So you have to make sure that you can learn to trust yourself through these times by holding on to truth versus just perception. All right.
Yeah. And if you're someone who feels like you don't have that self-trust yet, because a lot of people with anxious attachment struggle with self-trust, the number one solution to this is creating autonomy. You must be the source of your own happiness. You must be the source of your own identity. Your partner is there to add to your life, to help you expand, to help you grow. But you have to be your own person, and that is where you will discover self-trust, and you will cultivate true intuition and true boundaries. I mean, that's one of the hardest things anxious people struggle with, is having boundaries and not putting their needs down to accommodate others to stay in connection. You must make, the way I look at it, you must be 51% selfish, 49% selfless.
And we've done some very powerful episodes on boundaries, so go check them out. They're really good. They're really, really good. And speaking of without truth, there is no trust. That is literally how we start to change this, how we start to embody a more healthy pattern, because it begins with learning to name, call out what is happening before we obey it. To start noticing the moments when those activations happen, right? And that first move is not to chase or collapse into calamity. The first move, like we always say, the most powerful things on earth, one of the most powerful weapons, one of the most powerful medicines to exist is the pause.
Yeah.
All right? And we have to start learning to see this stuff and calling it out and taking responsibility for our bodies, our nervous systems, right? That one simple sentence, that one simple act creates space, and it creates space in a very healthy way, right? Because it does not dismiss the feeling.
Oh, that's powerful. And it's so important, that pause. One of the best things I ever heard to help me manage my anxious attachment, especially when I was questioning things, I was creating stories, is the knowledge I'm using to create this story, is this irrefutable? Is this something that if I could have watched on a camera and see happen? Or is this something that I'm creating up in my head with little breadcrumbs of evidence that I'm now building into a little castle of an idea? So,
Yeah.
do you have any closing thoughts before we jump into our affirmations exercise and journaling prompts?
Yeah, listen, you're not too much. You're not being too much. That's a popular phrase these days. Stop being so too much. Right? You're not. You're not. It's proof of a few things. Number one, that you're a human being. Hate to break it to you, but I'm going to diagnose you as a human being, like the rest of us, right? And with that comes a lot of hard things. But it's also proof that along the way, for whatever reason, love did not feel safe enough or secure enough for your body to find a place to rest. But healing is possible, right? Right, Michael? Healing's possible.
Yeah.
And it's and that begins when we stop letting fear interrupt, or not interrupt, but interpret every silence that we have, every lull, every break, every pause. It begins when we actively, consciously pause before chasing after everything that's not good for us, especially things like reassurance. Now, it begins when you can say, this belongs to me. This is my activation. I'm in charge of this nervous system. I'm in charge of this body. I'm in charge of this mind. I'm in charge of this heart, right? You don't need to stop needing love. You need love. I need love, right? The goal is to stop losing yourself in the fear of losing love. Does that make sense? It sounded weird, but I think that
that was
sense.
a really good way to phrase it. Yeah.
So this week, I want you to practice the pause. That's my prescription to you, because you've been diagnosed as being a human being who's worthy of love, and I love you. But you're going to need some medicine, and the medicine is the pause. So you're not too much. You're just trying to learn to love without panicking, which is a lot. So give yourself some grace. Pause and breathe and try to return to the truth, the reality, as often as you can.
Very well said. For exercise, I think it was pertinent to do the pause, and better said, the pause window. If you're someone who suffers with anxious attachment, you constantly feel that need. Once that body triggers in, turns on, and you want to reach out, get that validation, get that reassurance, this is where we're going to start incorporating the pause. When you feel this flare up in your body, when you go to send that message, make that phone call, when you're getting ready to reach out and try to get that validation, just take 10 seconds. Regulate your nervous system. Number one, breath work, the box breath. 7 in, hold for 7, 7 out, hold for 7, and just keep that going. Bring your nervous system back to baseline. Remove that sense of urgency. That was a practice I had when I was healing my anxious attachment, is I will never send messages if I feel a sense of urgency unless someone's like dying. I'm never going to send messages when I'm triggered or activated. So give yourself just 10 seconds. Bring yourself back to baseline. Then ask yourself, is this thing I was going to do, send a message, make that phone call, am I doing this because I need validation or because I need reassurance or because there's a genuine concern I have come up? And I'm not saying don't send the message, right? We're all in different stages of this, but at least your response will be much calmer and much more grounded instead of acting from a place of urgency, concern, and condemnation. For affirmations today, I am allowed to need connection and still trust that I am enough. My worth doesn't depend on someone else's response. I can tolerate uncertainty without it meaning something has gone wrong. I am becoming someone who trusts love, including the love I give myself. And my nervous system is learning I don't have to be healed to be okay right now. And our journaling prompts. Think about a recent moment where you sought reassurance. What were you actually afraid of underneath the surface? And where have you felt that before? What would it look like to act from security instead of fear in one relationship in your life right now? What would you have to do differently to do so? And what's one story you tell yourself when someone goes quiet or pulls back? Where did you first learn to tell that story? Because often these things are rooted in patterns. And if you enjoyed these journaling prompts, exercise, affirmations, below you'll find a link to an episode guide that'll give you a whole bunch of exercises to work on this, including all the stuff we brought up at the end of this episode, and to sign up for our weekly newsletter where we'll have different resources and the things we're putting out. We want to create more content and value for you guys, so just, if you found value in this episode, jump into the subscription. Share it with someone you think could benefit from it, whether it's a partner that's struggling with someone who has an anxious attachment or someone who has anxious attachment. Also, give us a like, follow us on all the different channels, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the YouTubes.
The greatest website ever, newashla.com. Newashla.com. And if you want some kind of one-on-one time with us, there is an option for that. Check out our coaching page at newashla.com and sign up for a consultation with Michael and I. So
we can help you work through this.
Yeah.
It's our bread and butter. With love and gratitude. Ad lucem.
Ad lucem.